The Forerunners have always been integral to Halo as a whole. Not only are they the reason the game series is called what it is, but look far enough back in any part of the lore, and chances are it's connected to the Forerunners. But with Halo 4 starting a whole new saga, a new threat for Master Chief and Cortana to fight had to be created. And considering the many unknowns regarding the Forerunners back then, they were chosen as the base for these robotic, unnerving, and almost humanoid enemies. These were the Prometheans. While the Prometheans and their weaponry had an interesting and unique look, many fans at the time felt like they strayed too far away from the Forerunners to be considered Forerunner in nature. But with Halo going back to a more classic Forerunner aesthetic recently, I wonder, how would these controversial weapons look if they were made with that aesthetic in mind? It's time to redesign the weapons of the Prometheans. Greetings, Redesigned here. In this episode of Redesigning Halo, we're actually retreading old ground. In case you didn't know, I already redesigned most of the Promethean weapons some years back. But looking back at those designs now, I can't stress enough how much I would change about them. Now, I think it's important as an artist to not just hate your old work, but instead see areas of improvement and use that to become even better. And that's what we're doing today. Because while I still stand by some of the sentiments I brought up in that video, in hindsight, I just wasn't ready for the task back then. But 5 years later, with a bachelor's degree of arts under my belt, I think it's time. And before we begin, I want to thank my Spartan 2 patrons and Discord mods for helping me out with these designs. If you also want to be part of the council and help design my art, then check out my Patreon. Now, without further ado, let's begin. Among the weapons in the Promethean arsenal, the BOLTSHOT is arguably one of the most iconic. While Halo 5's iteration of this pistol wasn't anything to write home about, in Halo 4, the BOLTSHOT was incredible, bordering on infamous. But visually speaking, I've always felt like the balance of the design could be improved. There's so much detail and mass in the front of the gun, which makes the grip side of it look a little thin to me. So here's my redesign. The BOLTSHOT is one of the few Promethean weapons I didn't cover in my old video, so going into this, I genuinely had no plan whatsoever. However, I knew I wanted to let the gun breathe a little, by opening up the middle a lot more. In the beginning, what I came up with was a lot more advanced and complex, but I quickly realized a gun that small shouldn't be packed with all that detail. Also, with the help of my council, I made sure to include the little wings that pop out in the shotgun mode. But the game changer with not only this gun, but all of these redesigns, was the decision to go 3D. And by 3D, I'm not referring to actual 3D models, but instead letting us see the gun from a slight angle, showing off a whole new dimension. And with the BOLTSHOT, I realized there was huge potential. By looking at this scrapped armament blaster as inspiration, I added circular parts for the magazine, as well as the barrel or muzzle or whatever you want to call it. Not only does this bring in a weapon that was taken from us in Halo Infinite, but it also just breaks up the otherwise blocky look of the BOLTSHOT. Other than that, I just tweaked some proportions and connected the bottom of the grip to the gun for stability's sake. So while the DNA of the BOLTSHOT is still very much present, my redesign is a more streamlined version of it. Let me know what you think of this design. It's safe to say the SCATTERSHOT is one of the most universally praised Promethean designs. The gameplay of it, as well as the looks, is to me one of the highlights of the 343 era Halo games. That said, with my opinions on Forerunner technology leaning more towards their depictions in the Bungie games as well as Halo Infinite, there are things I'd change about it if it were to come back. And while I like the original, I just don't want to make tiny changes. So let's try something new. And here's my redesign. Seeing as I like the original as it is, I didn't want to make minuscule, insignificant changes to it, so I went back to the drawing board. The SCATTERSHOT, at the end of the day, is an alien shotgun. That's all it is. So what if we go even harder with the shotgun influence? I tried to implement the character of a break-action shotgun by giving it a pseudo-curved look. Seeing as this is Forerunner, I can't exactly make actual curves, so I just shaped the stock in the barrel in a way to give it that illusion. And with this look, it's almost calling back to weapons such as the blunderbuss with its chunky silhouette. Comparing it to my old redesign, despite not having a good grasp of dimensionality back then, I went with a much more safe and flat design. So my change in direction is pretty interesting. And with this redesign, it's a good time to bring up the fact that I used Halo Infinite's Forerunner weapons as a huge source of inspiration. What I love about the Heatwave, Sentinel Beam, and Cindershot in that game is that they dare to use big, simple shapes in a way that doesn't dumb down the design. And as for the Cindershot specifically, I used that gun's foregrip part for the SCATTERSHOT, because I think stuff like that adds to the design and gives it a more unique silhouette, while simultaneously giving it some room to breathe. Also worth bringing up is the color of the energy flowing through these weapons. Halo 4 and 5 made a big deal of Prometheans being orange, but brainstorming with the council, we came up with the idea of implementing the way Halo Infinite portrays its Forerunner equipment. While not being very visible on the side of those guns, the way the energy shifts from purple to orange gives them such a unique and alien look, which I think works perfectly for the Prometheans. And in this faithful yet unique take on the SCATTERSHOT, that's on full display. Let me know what you think of this design. The poster child for the Promethean weapons, the light rifle, is probably the weapon that first comes to mind when talking about the Forerunner arsenal. Serving a similar role to precision weapons such as the battle rifle and the DMR, the design of the light rifle also aims to fit neatly into that class of guns. While I find the design good and very inoffensive, it's also rather stale, so I want to add something to break up the monotone look of it while still keeping the simplicity. So here's my redesign. The light rifle was the first redesign I started working on in this project, and in that way, it became the proof of concept and an exploration of different ideas. One idea that was born here was the inclusion of golden accents. They're subtle, but near the stock, gold panels frame the darker parts of the design. And this has always been a great way of making Forerunner equipment seem ancient. And with Halo Infinite incorporating much more gold and bronze into the Forerunner architecture, I felt like it was only natural to bring in some of that here as well. It also gives the weapons this motherboard techie look, which makes me think of Halo 2's Forerunner stuff. For the design itself, I like the idea of keeping the top part of the barrel, even enlarge it in fact, while making something a little different for the lower half. It was also important to me to further separate it from the way too similar looking binary rifle, but we'll get there in a bit. I also made the scope a little bigger and shaped it in a way to make it fit rather neatly into the gun itself. And speaking of, let's talk about the functionality. Throughout the years and in my comment section, I've seen the everlasting debate about either making Forerunner weapons truly alien and unconventional, or giving them very human adjusted proportions, seeing as Forerunners are very anatomically similar to humans, and therefore should have guns similar to ours. And I see great points with each side, and so does Halo Infinite it seems, because the Heatwave and the Cindershot look really different when it comes to the functionality. I mean, just look at the grip parts of these two weapons. And my solution was to go with something in between. See, in my headcanon, these guns, when wielded by Prometheans, are mechanically attached to their bodies. So they were never made for humanoid creatures, they were made for robots. However, when dropped and subsequently picked up by a player, it literally transforms into something fitting for the current user. The gun itself has some sort of intelligence that can take many different shapes, but still have the overall shape of a certain weapon. And that's why my redesign looks very much functional, but rather uncomfortable to hold in your hands. That grip is not very ergonomic. And comparing it to my old one, I almost went simpler with my new redesign, going for a more unified look for the top barrel. So what we ended up with is a recognizable, yet surprisingly different take on the light rifle. Let me know what you think of this design. Just from the size and presence of the incineration cannon, you know this thing packs a punch. And while I like the aggressive and intense shapes of the original, I also think the amount of detail doesn't leave the design with many places to rest your eyes upon. The only place being the elongated light on one of the barrels. So with my redesign, I want to keep the overall look, but give it more clear shapes and a less cluttered design. And here's my redesign. Just like the SCATTERSHOT, here I made use of bold and simple shapes, but gave it a similar silhouette to the original. Part of me wanted to make it more alien and impractical, but I realized having it be clearly a rocket launcher type weapon wasn't such a bad thing. See, another common point that's brought up by the community is if Forerunner weapons should go the route of the old Sentinel beam, something that's ripped straight out of a machine, or if the weapons should have more clear and recognizable shapes that are the equivalent of our human weapon classes. And while I prefer going with something more unique than Spanker but Forerunner, I'm not gonna try and change the functionality of these weapons drastically. I want to stay true to their original purpose, and the incineration cannon vaguely looking like a rocket launcher is actually pretty smart to convey its purpose. One thing I realized I loved about the original was the amount of barrels. Having 5 glowing tubes of death is such a goofy but also terrifying aspect of the incineration cannon, and this angled look also gives us a clear view of all of them. At first, I experimented with giving it an underbite to give it a unique visual quirk, but with the council's help, we ended up at something much more faithful to the original. So, let me know what you think of this redesign. Now, for a much smaller gun, the Suppressor is a design with a lot of potential. To me, while the compact and kinda beefy look gives it character, it's also its biggest flaw. Considering it's a fast-firing advanced alien weapon, I'd want to see a lighter build to it, something a little more aggressive and agile. So here's my redesign. Now it's clear I made some pretty big changes to it. While the overall shape is there, I've tweaked many of the parts to give us a more slim version of the Suppressor. For example, the bottom of the grip was changed from being flat to tilted, and the optic also got a more sharp look. Yes, the Suppressor has an optic now. Giving it more 45-degree-ish angles like this gives the design the illusion of motion, opposed to a more static and stable design with mostly 90-degree angles. The limited use of light is carried over with rather accurate placement. And speaking of, the protruding tube disc thingy has returned. At first, I was thinking of giving it a flat disc similar to the Heatwave, but I was eventually persuaded to give it the slanted look of the original, which gave it some much needed dynamism. And something featured in all of these designs is a subtle use of grime. By adding some dirt and darker areas in crevices and along lines, it not only gave it some natural ambient occlusion, but it also shows the age of the weapons. I personally prefer when Forerunner equipment feels ancient over new and shiny, and that would include the Promethean weapons. And all of this gives us a design that follows the blueprint of the original, but stands on its own with a more elegant and agile appearance. Let me know what you think of this one. And finally, the light rifle's big brother, the binary rifle, is one of the bigger firearms in the series. This beast of a sniper rifle has seen 2 slightly different takes on its gameplay, but the model has mostly stayed the same. Although I think it's a strong design, I've always felt like the binary rifle could do more with its shape, to distance itself just a little bit more from human proportions. So here's my redesign. Straight away, I've clearly based this on my old redesign. Because while I disliked the designs I made back then, I think I was onto something with the shape of the binary rifle. I like the idea of exaggerating certain aspects of the design, and this time it's the underbite of the two quote-unquote barrels. The scope and stock also get a more sharp redesign to give this otherwise rather static model some more excitement. At first, I definitely got carried away with this design. I tried giving it a bunch of Forerunner scaffolding and left holes throughout the design to give it a lighter build. But thanks to the wisdom of the council, and after some thinking, I instead embraced the massive look of this gun and kept it rather contained and unified. An important aspect of this design to me is that it should include quite a lot of details. I want to make sure I look at these designs with the right scaling in mind. Something like the binary rifle has enough area to warrant this amount of detailing, while something like the BOLTSHOT should be a little more reserved. And hopefully, I succeeded in keeping the spirit of the original. So, let me know what you think of this redesign. And there we have it. That's all 6 Promethean weapons redesigned, properly this time. Let me know what you think of these. Which one is your favorite? And let me know what you would like to see next on the channel. Once again, huge thanks goes out to the council, consisting of my Spartan 2 patrons and Discord mods, for helping me create these designs. I can't stress enough how helpful they've been in this and all of my other projects. And like I said, feel free to give me your video suggestions. Not gonna lie, I haven't been in much of a Halo mood recently, but I think I'm getting back to it. So, if you have any ideas, let me know and I'll see what I can do. If you want to support what I do and be a part of my redesigning and Halofying process, then be sure to check out the different tiers on my Patreon. Link is in the description. Also, be sure to join the Redesigned Discord. We share art, discuss Halo, have game nights, all you could think of, so get in there. Now, I want to thank my Spartan 2 patrons. That one guy, Diehard Colt 3, Coden Wash, Captain Waffles, and Poison Ebony 666. My Spartan 3s, Azores, and Dylan Clark. And my Spartan 4s, Bike02, Og2nd 2022, KA Cosplay Tech, Fred the 16th, and Armazol. If you like this video, give it a like. If not, a dislike. And let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I wish you all the best, and take care. Redesigned, out.